and welcome to the future of diagnostics with Caitlin Cameron, CEO of Otonexus Medical Technologies. I'm Berit Anderson, CEO of SNS and FIRE, and our conversation today will last about 20 minutes, after which we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you have questions for Caitlin during the conversation, please drop them in the chat, and our MC will call on you directly once we've wrapped up our interview. So Otonexus is a kind of an incredible story for us. They were a fire starter at FIRE in 2016. In 2019, Otonexus was awarded Company of the Year, a position, a two-part position, the Fire Starter Company of the Year transition, held only also by Tesla. They were the only other company to have that kind of dual fire role. And Caitlin is just such an incredible CEO. She's an incredible presenter. She's an incredible, the things that she does with her company are truly awe-inspiring to watch. And she does them with this positivity and optimism about her field and her work that is really incredible. So Caitlin, thank you so much for coming back to FIRE. We are so delighted to have you here with us, and you're just a pleasure to work with in general.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Berit. I really appreciate that. That was a really kind introduction. Thank you.
So we're going to talk today about the future of diagnostics generally, but for those here who have seen Otonexus at FIRE before, can you give us a little bit of an update? What's been going on with you guys since the, pandemic, post-pandemic? Where are you now?
Actually, thanks for that. It's really, really a good time for the company right now. It's really exciting. And, I just have to say right up front, I have this most amazing team of people that I work with. I'm just an honor to work with these great folks who are really making things happen. We've been working in this company with a number of really amazing clinical partners in the clinical world. We've been working with, children's hospitals all over the country, some of the best in the world, Texas Children's Minnesota, Children's of Philadelphia, which, if you know anything about children's hospitals, one of the premier children's hospitals in the entire world, not just in the United States, working with Duke University, working with Mayo Clinic. I mean, these are the premier institutions, research institutions, not just here in the US, but the world over. And it's such an honor to have them choose to work with us to bring this amazing technology to market. It's really exciting. And in addition, we're at the point now we're having our really unique ultrasound transducers manufactured. Those of you who know a little bit about us, we have this absolute unique ultrasound technology. It's absolutely tiny, just 900 microns on the side, and it works through air. Anything about ultrasound, that it requires gel coupling, but gel is a thing of the past now. We have this amazing technology. Think of sort of the Star Trek transponder that you can point at the body and you can get information about what's going on inside of the body. And all of that is happening right now as we are moving forward, getting closer to market. I'll just take a quick minute, if it works for you, to explain what it is that we do here.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest
that could be your next question, right? So Otonexus Medical Technologies' first product that we've been working on, and with tremendous support from all of you guys, thank you so much, is basically an ultrasound otoscope for the accurate diagnosis of middle ear infections in kids. It works in really just pretty much like the tool that they use today, fits perfectly into the pediatrician's workflow, actually reduces time to diagnosis as opposed to increases time, and is the only technology in the world that can differentiate a viral from a bacterial infection and therefore accurately determine whether or not to prescribe an antibiotic. Antibiotics, this is the number one reason for antibiotics in kids is middle ear infections. It's also number one reason for surgery. This device, we believe, can reduce antibiotics for this number one reason for antibiotics in kids by 50%, which is huge. We all understand the importance of reducing antibiotics generally, but it's even more important for kids because their growing bodies respond more powerfully to that antibiotic than our adult bodies do. And it affects the microbiome. It can affect them throughout their entire life. In addition, it's a tool that can end the argument with a parent, and it's a tool that for adults can rule out a middle ear infection, otitis media, in order to rule in something potentially much worse, TMJ or even cancer. Cancers of the throat and the back of the tongue commonly refer to ear pain and can be misdiagnosed as a middle ear infection. So this is our number one tool. We've got about a couple of dozen medical devices coming along behind this that use this unique ultrasound technology that works through air, and also other applications in other industries as well.
And so this is pretty exciting because I think the new tools coming along behind it is something that we have not heard about before. What are the other applications of this that you see coming?
Yeah, it's I got to be really careful because we got a lot of patents working their way through the process, but this is just the beginning. this ultrasound technology can do so much. I'll give you one example: is we can very quickly and easily create a kinder, gentler, cheaper tonometer for determining glaucoma. And it would be basically, it's the exact same tool with some very minor adjustments. That's just one application, and just many, many more to come. And in addition, outside of medicine, we're looking at other industrial applications.
And as I understand it, you're working with a series of doctors all over the country, the country's leading pediatricians. And tell us a little bit about what you found so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you, they absolutely love this device. It's funny because they say if all you could do is just determine infection or no infection, that'd be great. But the fact that you can actually differentiate viral from bacterial, that's huge. It's absolutely unheard of. There's no technology in the world that can differentiate viral from bacterial. And it's a very easy to use tool. It's very intuitive. We've been putting it in the hands of docs all over the country, and they're giving us feedback. And this is what you do. Why you do this is we put it in the hands, have the doctors use it. They say, this is what I love about it. And then with that feedback, we're actually making some fine tuning and improvements. It's fine tuned, but big improvements. One of the things that we did was discovered a way to completely automate everything that is done. Again, there were patents, but it makes it so much easier to use. You have this tool, you're just looking at the outside of the eardrum and trying to make a guess about what's going on. This tool can give you instant and accurate information. By the way, 2 seconds or less, it gives you the answer.
And that is through a combination of sensing devices and AI, as I understand it.
Yeah, AI is kind of the next step. We're sort of at the data pattern recognition point at this point. Good stuff going on. So the feedback is fabulous. The doctors love it. They want to help us get it to market. That's kind of the net conversation.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
When pediatricians are begging you for your product, you're probably, you're in the right place.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about how this fits into the broader perspective on the future of diagnostics. This is just one tool, but I'm curious if what other trends are you seeing when it relate to the future of diagnostics?
Yeah, it's actually a really great time in diagnostics. You guys have heard me say before when you've heard me speak that we've added more years to the average human life in the last 100 years than in all prior human history combined. That's amazing. And the thing is, it's accelerating at the tail end of that last century, last 100 years. And that acceleration is going to continue. Now, some of that new technology and new ideas, of course, has come about through tremendous flood of funding from the federal government for COVID. But actually, the bigger challenges or bigger changes are coming outside of COVID in medical devices and in new technology. It's the technology that's really going to change the face of healthcare. What you need 3 things, and this is what we talk about in terms of my device as well as other technology, is you need technology that improves patient outcomes, that makes the doc's job easier, and that reduces cost at the same time. There's lots of technology that increases cost. That isn't going to go forward. It's the technologies that really make a difference. So, for example, smart devices and health sensors, smart devices like ours, and health sensors and other technology that does a better job of identifying what's actually going on in the body and what is the best course of treatment for it, changing the face of how we identify what's wrong and how we treat what's wrong, and providing actionable data that is instant and accurate. And that's a big, big step. So, smart devices, the technology in medical devices, think about like digital tattoos. How much of a game changer is that going to be? There's lots of wearables out there right now.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean digital tattoos?
There's a technology that I won't spend a whole lot of time on, but is under development right now and under some amount of testing, where you actually get a tattoo on your skin and it's got biosensors in it. And it kind of detects what's going on in your blood and in your body and in how much your aeration and all kinds of various things. So it's a very cool technology that I think can change the game. I'm tying that into the wearables because right now there's a lot of wearables out there, like Fitbit and the Apple Watch and all the rest of that. Most of those wearables today are focused on improving your work in tracking how you're doing against your workout. Tomorrow and starting today, some changes, that's going to become more like that digital tattoo that I'm talking about, where these devices are going to be tracking far more of your kind of health management, kind of like what Lee Hood's Era Valley originally was trying to do, identify everything about you and then be able to predict what's going to happen in the future, as opposed to simply react to what is wrong today. I think those things are going to make a big difference.
It sounds like you're advocating for a future in which we all have the potential to calculate our health statistics in the same vein as Larry Smarr, but without needing to be Larry Smarr. With an entire UCSD lab at your disposal in order to make that happen.
Exactly. And I think that, Larry Smarr and Lee Hood and these others started this trend. And I think it's the big medical device companies and the technology manufacturers are grabbing hold of that. The shift is very much what you just said, and this is going to make such a big difference, is we used to go to the doctor once a year and we did what the doctor told us. This new technology will allow us to know about ourselves and know what we need and own our own actions instead of just following somebody else's device. So it becomes a partnership between you and the physician, as opposed to you're just following the physician's orders. And a lot of new technology coming up is also going to change the world, moving from just treatment once we figured out something's wrong to prevention. And I think that is going to be a huge shift that much of this new technology that I'll talk about is really going to enable.
So I'm curious, there's this a little bit of a tension, I think, or there has been tension between, I noticed that you guys are working specifically with pediatricians and you're not going direct to consumer. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the tensions that we have seen in these direct to consumer technologies that empower consumers is that they don't necessarily have the context, for example, which like with 32 and you,
yeah, you and me, yeah, right, exactly.
They were giving people all this genetic data without any kind of medical context, and it became problematic because they were going out and making choices about their healthcare that may or may not have actually applied to them, and they weren't fully kind of like explaining what the applications of those genetic predispositions were. How do you think about that balance between individualized, personalized healthcare and diagnostics versus the expert model?
Very, very important. And I mentioned previously, it creates more of a partnership between the patient and the doctor. And that's, to me, the technology that's most valuable is that which creates a partnership, creates data that the doctor who has the expertise and experience can partner with the patient, and using more data, make better diagnoses and create more accurate treatments, better treatments. Now that's what I say today, but in addition to that, if you think about some of the other things that are going on with, I'm going to toss out AI, there could be a world in which these technologies really, with the support of some additional power behind them, could provide better diagnostics, where we as people who don't have the expertise are not making the decisions. There's obviously a lot of things that need to happen in order to manage the downside of all of that technology, but that technology has such power to change the world. I can see, the things like the brain-computer interface tied in with pattern recognition, ML, AI, tied in with, 5G communications, creating a world in which anybody at any time can identify what is not only wrong right now and what to do about it, but more importantly, getting in front of that and being able to determine, if I continue down this path, I am going to, in the future, have this problem, and I can manage that now. Or making conscious choices because we understand the impact of those choices. I think that there's a lot of technology out there that is it's still future, but it's close. And things like the brain-computer interface and the nanotechnology and 5G are in the works now, and I think we're going to see some of that really coming to fruition very soon.
So which technologies are you most enthusiastic about?
Well, so short-term, long-term, you look at the big picture and say, short-term, I'm really, really excited about smart devices like our own and the health sensors and the telehealth, the advances of telehealth, which allows the masses to have access to good healthcare. I think in the short term, that's my first focus and my first love. Behind that, there is a lot of stuff that goes direct to consumer that could be, with the addition of some of these new technologies, valuable, and creating that partnership between the doctor and the patient. And then in the future, artificial intelligence and pattern recognition. There's no doubt, by the way, that the pattern computing is going to change this world, absolutely change this world. That these three things coming together and creating a world in which we move from treatment to understanding prevention, understanding where we are and being able to see into the future. That's going to, by the way, it's one of the things we need to improve our messed up healthcare system, but it's not that far in the future. And I think it's really going to change the face of healthcare.
So Caitlin, you have we've talked about this before the call, so I know that your father is 90 years old and he lives by himself still
Yep.
in Oregon. What technologies do you recommend to him?
Well, so for him, this is funny because there's a lot of longevity in my family. I'm excited about this because, you know, his mother lived to be almost 100. His grandfather lived to be 103. The family lore is that he would have lived longer, except he was out chopping wood in the snow and caught pneumonia. So, you know, there's this a big.
But the chopping wood is also not bad for your health in general.
Exactly. So, you know, for him, it's a lot of these technologies come into play with his doctors, and he's very proactive about his health. He was the first one to get the COVID shots. He got himself boosted before I ever called him to say, hey, the boosters are available. He's going to see the doctors and making sure he's doing the right things and paying attention. Again, that future focus that I was talking about. For him, it's all about the future focus. For him, making sure that he's also, this is really important, it has nothing to do with technology, very well connected, a huge family of friends. The mental health aspects of having a network of friends is so important. And in the pandemic, he spent more time on Zoom than I did. My 9-year-old dad, just making sure he was connected with everybody.
So the human technology is really, in some ways, the most important.
Yeah. And in all these technologies that I'm talking about, you know, I think there's been a lot of advances where somebody said, here's a problem and I can fix it and I can use my technology to fix it. But just applying technology without really understanding the problem. So I think the real advances are going to be when these technologies come into play with a true understanding of the problems that we're trying to fix and are made human-centric instead of technology-centric. I mean, some of this stuff, surgical and medical robots, 3D, hologic imaging, it sounds very futuristic, and it is. The key to making all of this successful is to make it human-centric and not just try to use technology to solve the problem, but figure out how the human being fits into that solution and that technology.
So we have one question in the chat. If anyone else has a question, feel free to drop it in. But I'm going to just jump to that now. Ev, do you want to pull that up?
Yeah, so Eric Jansen asked, and this is kind of when you were talking about different sensor data and stuff, he asked, how will insurance change when sensor revealed predispositioning data is linked to actuarial outcomes?
Now that's a big question.
Yeah, will insurance systems move from group diversified risk to individual costs borne on the individual? We get to health ed.
That's the end.
Yeah, that's the end. I'm a little confused about that last part, but I think the real question is, will our behavior be, watched and will insurance respond?
Yeah, you heard me mention earlier, there are downsides and they need to be managed. That's one of them, absolutely one of them. And we need to be very cognizant of all of this, of the potential downside. But here I'm talking about the upsides. Insurance obviously is one of the big things I mentioned, that it's going to change, that our healthcare system is very broken. Some of these technologies will help. The current insurance system does not support innovation like the sort of innovation I'm talking about. Our healthcare system does not really center around the promotion of good technology. So some of that has to change as well, but I think it's going to be driven from the development of the technology, not driven from insurance companies saying, I think I need to change the way I'm doing things. It's going to be based on the facts and the data. And it says, look, you have better outcomes, you reduce costs. That's the technology like ours. I mean, the insurance companies have said they will push the use of our technology because they see the benefit and they see the cost reduction. They're really about cost reduction, let's be honest. But this new technology is going to break that mold, and we'll see how it plays out. I don't really like the idea myself of having somebody tracking my every movement, but if I can track my every movement and determine what I give to that system, that's a different.
Like if you could track your every movement and then send your overall score, right? That's a very different thing than allowing the an insurance company to see every single health input that you have in your life. Although to be real, like they're already doing that because they are tracking your credit card spending. They can basically develop. There's enough big data out there. They can develop kind of a health assessment of your moods and behavior and habits without actually wearing it wearable anyway.
Kind of scary. So my hope is, again, that some of this technology that I've been talking about can be used to solve some of those issues too. And I mentioned moving the control from the doctor to the patient. I believe that's really important for the future, is the control to be in the patient's hands. And the more data the patient has, then they can partner with the physician on the things that matter the most.
What do you see as the biggest barrier to that transition? Because I mean, we hear a lot about kind of cultural issues to overcome in that space in the medical community. And I'm curious if you think that is how you think about that, basically.
Ask me the question again, Berit. I'm not sure.
So I'm like, as you think about this transition that we're making from a doctor-centric model to a doctor-patient partnership model, are we going to see a lot of resistance from doctors? And how do you make that cultural shift within the medical community?
Yeah, so when you go to the doctor today and you've done your Google search and you go in and you say, here's what I think.
Right, they get annoyed.
They get annoyed. They talk about Dr. Google coming in, right? At the same time, they want the patients to be educated. And education, they understand very much that education helps with compliance. Because if they just say, here's a pill, take it, why would I take that pill if I don't understand what its purpose is and why it's important to me? So yeah, it's going to be a balance, and there's going to be some pushback here and there. But again, I think it all comes down to showing the benefits. And when the doctor's life is made easier and they can focus on the things that they love the most, instead of getting dragged down into, spending time on the EMR and all the stuff that they hate, this technology can enable allowing a physician to spend their time at their highest purpose. And I think that is when you'll really get the buy.
So I have a couple more questions from the chat. Alejandra asks, how do you manage the change of control doctor to patient? I think it's change of control from doctor to patient without the necessary changes that are required on patient education and science in particular.
Yeah, it's hard.
Therein lies the rub.
Yeah, therein lies the rub. But I think we've been seeing it happen. I think we've come a long way. If you look at the technology advances of the last 10 years, 15 years, it's slow, and the insurance system and the healthcare system in this United States really, as I said, is not designed to support innovation. But when we can improve outcomes, better patient care, and reduce cost of care, then it happens. And you see insurance companies embracing, and the healthcare system embracing new technology when it does those things and when it can be proven to do those things.
So Mary Branscombe asks, how do we get to a point that we can send data without it being tracked to us, back to us, but still send enough data for the modeling to work?
Mm-hmm.
Which higher level scores may not provide. Yeah, the higher level scores that we were talking about earlier may not provide enough info for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not the technology guru that is going to do the programming on that. I think pattern computing might do that. A couple of other organizations might do that. That's some things, as I said, there's some things we need to figure out, with some things we need to determine how to get it done. But I think that the people who are creating some of these technologies that I've been talking about are very focused on that problem, understand the strength and the weaknesses. And some of the things that we're seeing, you do a little bit of research on some of this stuff, and it's amazing what some of the improvement in outcomes are. It's almost more of a philosophical shift than a physical shift to placing more control into the hands of patients. And that is not where our healthcare system is today, but we're moving there slowly and moving there. And if we can get technology in place that is actually, making these changes, then it will happen. Some of the stuff, let's call it 3D printing of organs, 3D printing of bones, 3D printing of skin. That's unheard. I mean, it blows your mind to think about. We could actually, instead of somebody has a failing organ, instead of needing an organ transplant, we could 3D print an organ. That sort of stuff is coming, and it's not traditional, but it is being accepted already into our system. So the more this technology becomes available and proven, the more it will be accepted. And it's my hope, by the way, that we can actually have a sort of a major shift in the healthcare system in the United States. We have to, if we're going to move forward. This system just does not support innovation and healthcare going forward.
What specific parts of that do you think are most important to reform?
Everything. Yeah, the system, again, it's very sort of stuck in the mud of the past. The way we used to do things. So go to the doctor once a year and the doctor tells you what to do. And then there's an insurance company that pays for that, but they don't want to pay for anything else because that's expensive. So we do need a shift that is more focused on prevention. That's probably the most important thing to me. It's more focused on prevention. And this shift from thinking about somebody gets sick and we help them get better, versus let's look at what could potentially happen and try to prevent. That is a fundamental shift in healthcare, is to start looking at prevention instead of fixing.
So Ty says that he expects that companies and corporations who are paying for that insurance or are self-insured will probably start leading the way with health incentives, which I think we're seeing quite a lot of already, right?
Yeah.
And providing bonus credit payments for employees who are spending time investing in their own exercise and health. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That is, and I think that, again, you're seeing more and more of that too, as more and more companies are looking to shift to preventative instead of and reduce their own costs. Really, it's driven by cost, but it works. Can't agree more. And I think that more and more we will see that.
All right, Larry Smar says there are a few doctors who are building wearable data dashboards for their patients. They then figure out how insurance and reimbursement must change, which ties directly into what we were talking about before. Do you see some of this happening?
Yeah, and you're seeing it happen already, but just only a little bit of it, not nearly enough. And Larry's exactly right that this is the key topic that we need to address generally, and it's small incremental change to date. We need a big shift, a big shift, in order to get to where we need to be.
All right, I think we need to wrap up, so to give everyone time to pop back over to the next session. I will just read David's last comment before I let Evan tell you about the next session, which is, can these methods also be applied to the user's immediate environment, for example, appraisal of foods or water quality? And David, I would say yes. In fact, one of the companies at Fire last year, Green America, is working on a wearable toxicity sensor for employees working in high risk facilities. So yes, that and many other spaces,
including some of our new technology
that you can't tell us about. Not yet.
But I will at a future Fire.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time, Caitlin. It's always interesting to see how far you guys have come, and I'm so glad that you have weathered the pandemic and are still out there growing and still with us here at Fire.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this opportunity to chat.